Hi guys, Jonathan Klonowski here. You can find me over at jklonowski NFL, and I'm here to bring you another video in our Dynasty Target series for 2023 here at Fantasy and Frames. Please subscribe for more fantasy content this off-season. Please go to fantasyandframes.com for more of our articles, more rankings. And the guy that I want to talk to you about today is Jakobi Meyers. Now, he's been a really solid contributor for your fantasy teams the last 2 or 3 years, and he is now set to become a free agent and someone that I think can really help your dynasty teams this year and hopefully in the years to come. So if we think about where he is at the moment, obviously, as I said, he is set to become a free agent. And if we look at the free agent market for running backs, that's littered with talent. You've got the likes of Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard. And that really isn't the case with the wide receiver market. You've got the likes of Juju Smith-Schuster, Alan Lazard, DJ Chark. And so I think what we may now see is Jakobi Meyers, who, initially was an undrafted free agent, but has had some really good underrated seasons with the Patriots, could quite possibly earn quite a lot more money than we potentially expect. I think it's not too far to say that he could be this year's Christian Kirk. Not that he's necessarily going to earn $18 million a year and hit wide receiver 2 numbers, but just that because of that lack of supply, that he could earn a much larger contract than we initially expected and have a much larger role in an offense than we possibly expect. If you think about some of the teams that have plenty of cap space and a need at wide receiver, teams like the New York Giants, Chicago Bears, you could easily see his dynasty value rise, particularly in the short term once that contract is handed out, but also in the longer term once he hits the field. And actually, even if he stays with the Patriots, I don't think that is the worst situation in the world. It was a rather dysfunctional offense last year, and I think bringing in Bill O'Brien, having hopefully a more functional offensive system there, could see his role grow even further. So if we look at his recent statistics, last year was his best season to date on a fantasy points per game basis. So he played in 14 games, had 96 targets, reeling in 67 of those for 804 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. He was, one of the few bright spots in that underwhelming Patriots offense. And over the last 2 years, he's been a key part of that passing offense. Over the last 2 years, he's seen an average of 7 targets per game. And as I said, last year was his best season so far on a points per game basis, hitting 12.9 points per game in PPR scoring according to FantasyData. And he has now hit 3 successive years over 10 fantasy points per game in PPR scoring. And it's worth saying that all of this was on a team that ranked 10th last in offensive pass DVOA according to Football Outsiders. So he wasn't doing this on the Chiefs or the Bills or the Bengals. This is on, one of the more underwhelming offenses, to say the least. And so hopefully with a larger contract, a growing role, hopefully potentially on a new team, we can see those statistics hopefully increase this year and going forwards. It is worth saying that with Myers, there has definitely been a kind of lack of upside over the last couple of years. Particularly if you looked last year, there were only 3 games in which he hit over 65 receiving yards. And before last year, he'd only scored 2 total touchdowns over his 3 previous years. So this isn't a guy that's, really sort of boom bust, is going to be getting you 20 or 30 points per game. This is someone that is going to be thrown into your flex, often getting between 8 to 15 points per game, but is going to be a really solid contributor. So particularly important to those contending teams, that a guy that you can throw into your flex, but hopefully with a larger contract, can hopefully see those stats grow. And all of this, and his dynasty value remains fairly low. If you look at the Dynasty League football January startup ADP, he was only at wide receiver 46. So if you're in startups at that stage of the draft, there's a lot of really boom bust players, particularly at wide receiver. And so he's a guy that, particularly if you're looking to contend, is going to be a really, really solid player for you. The Dynasty League football value only has him at an early third, and it is a little bit higher on Keep Trade Cut at wide receiver 40, which is around a mid to late second. So if I'm a contending team and I can send sort of late second for him, that's a deal that I'd be really happy to make, really excited about, because I think that given that contract situation, there's a chance that his value could rise in the short term, and as I said, be a really solid contributor to your fantasy team, hopefully in the pursuit of a dynasty championship this year. So they're my thoughts on Jakobi Meyers. Please leave a like. Please comment what you think. Any interesting Jakobi Meyers trades that you've seen in your leagues. And please subscribe to Fancy and Frames for more fancy content on our YouTube channel this offseason. Thank you very much.